For sea lions to venture into deep water here is very dangerous indeed. It's much safer to stay in the shallows if they can. In one or two places, channels enable the whales to get really close to the beach. Those are the danger spots. To get off the beach, the killer has to thrash its body. No other whale deliberately beaches itself in this way, or has perfected this method of getting back to the sea. As long as the sea lions stay well up the beach, you might think they would be safe. But the hungry whales are very daring. Now, several of the whales are hunting in a group. That sea lion was keeping just ahead of one of the whales, but was caught by another it probably hadn't seen. This savage beating may be to separate hide from flesh. Here's another good example of whales outsmarting people in the Mediterranean. On the receiving end is another prized fishing industry. Not herring this time, but giant bluefin tuna. A fish as big as this will net the crew at least $2,000. The boats are following a long tradition. Every summer, after spawning, bluefin tuna migrate from the Mediterranean to the Atlantic Ocean. Each year, the fishermen are waiting, and so are the killer whales. concrete blocks take the bait down to 200 meters because tuna swim very deep as well as fast. With the line paid out, the crew can only wait and hope and watch the whales. A fish has been hooked. The sound of the winch is a signal to the waiting whales. The fishermen will have to work as fast as possible to bring in the line. The whales simply bide their time. By the time the fish nears the boat, all the fight has gone out of it. This is as easy a meal as a killer whale could hope for. The whales can strip the tuna in minutes. All that remains for the fishermen are leftovers. This piracy on the high seas doesn't do much for the whale's popularity, but this is just too good an opportunity for them to miss. These killer whales began stealing fish in this way around 30 years ago. Now the culture has spread among all the members of 2 local pods. The fishing boats don't stand a chance.
A 6-ton orca slaps its tail with awesome destructive power. Under the water, tail slaps are used to stun the herring. Some fish come too quickly and escape back to the safety of the shoal. But most are picked off by the orcas, one by one. Soon the water glitters with fish scales as the orcas methodically consume the ball of fish. By breaking up the herring into a smaller shoal, the orcas have done the humpbacks a favor, turning the usual relationship between the animals on its head. Everywhere else on Earth, orcas are the humpback's biggest enemy. But here, the humpbacks cash in on the colossal fish supper. And the humpbacks aren't the only ones to gatecrash the orcas' party. Massive fin whales can swallow 3,000 herring in a single gulp. side by side. A unique scene, only possible here because of the warmth of the Gulf Stream.
The smaller females travel as a group, keeping a watchful eye in all directions. They know that killers lurk in the depths. The surface is a dangerous place to linger, especially if you're alone. Orca, killer whales. The sea lion is wounded, but the killers keep their distance. His powerful jaws are still a threat to the hungry orca. He struggles towards the safety of land. But his injuries are slowing him down. Blow by blow, they wear him down. It's a carefully coordinated attack. One killer distracts his attention, while another hits his soft underside. The richest seas on Earth can be treacherous.
It's very tempting to impose our own human, anthropocentric values on their actions, and that is, I think, a mistake. Probably the most interesting example of this I've seen has been working with Orca, sometimes known as killer whale. On a beach in Patagonia, at exactly the right time of the right tide, a pod of Orca will surge up onto the sands to snatch seal pups and to drag them back down into the surf where they feed on them. We waited for 5 days to see this, hunkered down low against, freezing Patagonian winds, trying to make as little an impression as possible on the seal pups that were playing around in the surf. And finally, the pod approached, they came up, and one animal surged up and onto the sands itself to snatch an animal and drag it back down into the water. It's an incredible thing to see. Orca could weigh 8 or 9 tons, and to risk beaching themselves to find a meal, that is a really heavy investment of energy and of serious risk to themselves as well. But the next bit was the part of the whole scenario that took us by surprise. So once they had this tiny pup in the sea, instead of just finishing it off in a heartbeat as they surely could have done, they seemed to play with it, to toy with it, to go round and round it in circles, tossing it out the water with their tails and not going in for the final killer bite. Well, this wasn't an adult fur seal, it was a small animal that seriously couldn't have done them any damage. And then it got even weirder, because we found on that same beach several carcasses of pups which had been taken by Orca. They had very definitive bite marks from the orca on them, and they had been killed, but not eaten. Otherwise, the carcass was completely perfect. Why would any animal go to that degree of effort and risk and then not eat it? didn't make any sense to us. Perhaps the answer lay in a different filming trip, also with Orca, but in British Columbia. My team and I had been lucky enough to happen upon a pod of Orca that were socialising, and we went out in our sea kayaks and paddled alongside them. The Orca were leaping out of the water, breaching, coming alongside me and just rolling onto their side so they could look up at me as they came past. It was truly breathtaking. But then they went from this playful, supersized dolphin, which is essentially what they are, into full-on predatory mode. And I've never seen an animal switch as fast as this ever. They'd encountered a fully grown male Steller's sea lion, which is 3/4 of a ton, 750 kilos of flashing teeth, a serious predator in its own right. And the pod of Orca cornered it into a bay. So we got out of our kayaks and got onto shore, and we came right up close to see the whole breathtaking spectacle play out. They took it down by breaching up and landing on top of it, by slapping it with their tails, and just generally tiring the animal out. You know, it was outgunned, outnumbered, outweighed, and it simply had no chance, although it kept trying to make a run for the kelp beds where the Orca wouldn't follow. Watching this happen, it took a long time, and you could see it getting more and more tired, more and more worn out, and you know, you feel for them. Everyone's seen sea lions, and they have these great big dark eyes. They really pull on your heartstrings because they have, it would appear, so many similarities to us as human beings. They certainly are. They do share a common ancestor with us. But then finally, when the animal was no longer a threat, when it was so tired and so beaten that it couldn't fight back, then they brought in their youngsters. They brought in their calves. They were quite young animals, but they were clearly being taught by their parents how to hunt, replicating their parents' maneuvers. They were also breaching up out of the water and tail slapping on the Steller sea lion, and this went on for a good while. You can see that it was an instructional process. They were using the Steller sea lion as a teaching aid, and that was pretty uncomfortable to watch. It would appear to us to be incredibly cruel. But the next bit was the bit that just took it to a whole different level. Because once all of that was finished, once the lesson was over, rather than coming in and finishing off the Steller sea lion, they all turned on some unseen, unheard signal and just swam off to sea and left it. They didn't eat a single mouthful of that Steller sea lion, and we just couldn't understand why. But it seems that orca are one of the animals that indulge in what is known as surplus killing. That is, killing that is not designed to be for food. Kind of seems that they compartmentalize their lives. So if they're traveling, they're traveling. They're socializing, they're socializing. If they're hunting, that's what they're doing. And likewise, if they're teaching and learning, well, they don't play with their food. It's really tough for you as an observer to see an animal going through so much stress and pain and overwhelming exertion, and then for it not even to result in, precious calories for the orca. It seems so cruel. But then surely we as human beings are the worst culprit of that. There is no other animal that will engage with it and kill potential food, but then not eat it and just kill it for sport. In that, surely we human beings are the master.
Oh my God!
That was absolutely phenomenal. Just wow. a furious race. At one point, one orca was coming up and it must have had a seal in its mouth, and the other orca came up and did a handbrake turn and was like, and they went nose to nose. This one's swimming forwards, this one's swimming backwards, and they're sharing the seal. It was ridiculous. Just amazing how tender they are. One catches the seal and then they all gently share it with one another and with the baby. It's just absolutely phenomenal. Just wow.
We are right now with a pod of orcas, and I've just taken a picture of one orca that's been tagged, and it means that it's one of those orcas that has been released here in the Russian Far East. That means that despite all the arguments from the captive industry, orcas actually can be released and safely returned into their natural environment and live happy life in where they belong to.
Not much remains of the porpoise after the whales are through with it. Killer whales don't just target prey smaller than themselves. Off the coast of California, a grey whale and her baby are in serious danger. Once again, computer images give the underwater view of an extraordinary hunt. The grey whale calf is just a few weeks old. It's following its mother north towards the summer feeding grounds in Alaska. They've reached Monterey Bay, where a deep trench cuts in from the sea. As they move beyond the trench wall, the grey whales lose their cover. Out in the bay, the killer whales are listening for that telltale sound, the breathing of a great whale. Immediately, their behavior changes. The killers close ranks like a hunting wolf pack. The killer whales have caught up with the mother and calf. And now the chase is on. The grey whales try to outswim their attackers. Fast swimming pushes up the grey whale's breathing rate. A breathless calf is easier to catch. The killers work as a team. Their first goal is to separate the baby from its mother. The grey whale mother is a formidable adversary. She could seriously harm a killer whale with just one slap of her massive tail fluke. One of the attackers pushes between mother and calf. The strategy is working. The grey whales are forced apart. With the baby separated, the killer whales change strategy. Now their goal is to drown the calf.